Good morning, Deep. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. I'm good.
Where are you taking the call from? Where are you right now?
I'm in Assam, Jorhat.
Good, good. I like all the trophies in the background.
Oh, please ignore that. Let me change the background. That's not what I wanted you to look at. That's very
No,
embarrassing.
it's okay. It's okay. I'll show you my background. It's my children's bedroom, so you can see my. There's a nice basketball hoop on the door. Welcome back to No Cost Extension. My guest today is Deep Jyoti Sonu Brahma, the founder and director of Farm2Food Foundation, an organization based in Assam that engages young people in farm and food entrepreneurship with the long-term goal of making communities self-reliant and sustainable. Deep also sits on the investment committee of the Rebuild India Fund, and a few months ago we traveled together visiting multiple NGO leaders who are doing amazing work across the Northeast. While I've worked in this sector for nearly 25 years, I realized my ignorance. And through these interactions, I began to learn about the distinctiveness that exists, taking into account multiple cultures and geographies. This requires a unique lens to effectively support NGOs in this region. Great. To begin with, I guess I want to start by just saying thank you for allowing us as Dasra and colleagues of mine that are part of the Rebuild India team to visit a region of India that we are still, as Dasra, fairly unfamiliar with. And that region is the Northeast. And I think every day we had with you was a learning experience for sure. And so, for example, even calling the region the Northeast and realizing every state, and even within the state, there's so much diversity that a one size solution does not make sense. So I think to start, I'd just love to hear a little bit about the region overall, what you think about it. What are some of the misconceptions that you feel people may have about that region, as well as if you can go into a little bit of detail about the diversity that exists there as well, and why certain solutions that work in certain areas of the Northeast may not be relevant in the rest of India or even vice versa.
Of course, I mean, it's a mistake to use the word Northeast region because Northeast region itself is such a diverse pool of state, community, languages. Like we have more than 200 spoken languages, and of course, and then several versions of dialects around it. Although we have 8 states, but in each of these states, we have different ethnic communities living together. So when you came to the Northeast, you were there in Shillong and Imphal and other places. You saw that ethnically we are very different. The food that we eat is very, very diverse, very localized, very different. We are really, really proud of our own culture, our own traditions, and the structure and the system that we have been carrying, the history that we have been carrying. Having said that, the region also has been facing lots of challenges in terms, not just the ethnic conflict that the region has gone through, not just the separatist conflict that the region has gone through, but the region is also facing lots of climate challenges. Assam, for example, has been, the flood is part of our life here in Assam. But over the years, this pattern of flood has become very, very irregular. There are lakhs and lakhs of people who become climate refugees in their own land. They have been losing their agriculture land, their homes, their schools, and they're forced to live in a refugee center, in a shelter, in a very, very dehumanizing situation. We also have communities, like for example, the tea garden communities, who were forced long time back to migrate all the way up here in Assam from the Chotanagpur plateau of India and were forced to work in a very, very difficult circumstances in the tea garden areas. Then we have in the hills, in the mountain region, we have communities who are over the year has become extremely vulnerable. There are some communities whose population is probably around 500 to 600 to about 1,000, extremely vulnerable group. There are, because of the erratic rainfall, the entire food system that we used to be, entire forest and ecology system that we were dependent upon is also going through a major shift. And because of which, our own culture, our own engagement with our resources, local resources, or ecology, or environment, or forest is changing very, very rapidly.
When we were there with you a few weeks ago, we met probably about 50 different organizations representing hundreds of communities that they serve. And I know one of the things that we spoke about in particular in Guwahati was around, as it related to climate, individuals and communities that live in and around rivers. And there was a conversation about the riverbanks. I think if you can talk a little bit about that, because I feel like that this is something that, again, everyone knows climate change is real, it's happening. Like you were saying, floods have always happened. In fact, I was surprised a few years ago to realize that while the rest of India calls it monsoon season, you have literally flood season. It's not even monsoon because that is what happens. But if you can tell us a little bit about what has been the effect of more recent climate change to communities who live in and around the rivers.
Very important to talk about the impact of climate when you talk about Northeast region. And traditionally, the flood system in Assam, because of this flood system, because of this river system, Assam has one of the most fertile land we had here in this part of the world. And in fact, many people are surprised when I tell them that Kaziranga Reserve Forest has survived and grown because of the regular flood that used to come. Because this flood water fills up the ponds and lakes of the forest and also cleans up the forest and provides life to the entire Kaziranga forest. Not just Kaziranga forest, many, many other reserve forests around the banks of this amazing river system that we have. And similarly, there were communities like missing community out there living on the banks of river. Their life used to revolve around the river. They used to depend on the floods. They used to depend on the river for giving them life, giving them food. There was a beautiful pattern and system to it. Now, because of this climate change that has come very suddenly and very, very rapidly and increasingly becoming more and more unpredictable, communities' engagement with the river has broken. Their relationship with the river system has broken. Their relationship with the flood system has broken. Some people say that it's a sign of development that these communities now have concrete houses, they have concrete buildings, they are moving out of agriculture and working in cities and urban areas. Earlier, missing community used to dwell on bamboo stilt houses, which was very easy to manage during the flood season. Now, because of the concrete building, they're losing their houses. Many schools have also been swept away in the flood. It's very difficult for them to live during the flood time. Similarly, because we are trying to embank the rivers, now river water has to flow somewhere, right? Now, because of concrete embankment in certain areas, now the river water is expanding in all those areas where water never used to go. And because of that, people who were not used to flood water are now facing this sudden onslaught of floods. And when the flood comes, along with that, disaster also happens. The other interesting thing that I was reading up into yesterday's newspaper is that there was a census done on the water bodies. And we found out that in Assam, particularly in Assam, apart from the rivers and other big water bodies, the smaller lakes and ponds. Almost 98%, 95% of these small ponds and lakes are now owned by private individuals. And only about 3 or 4% are owned by the community, the society, and the larger people. Now, earlier, what was happening was that it was the other way around. It was a community property, it was a society's property. So, everybody used to take care of the lake, the water system, the water bodies in the villages, in and around the forest. And therefore, each and everyone used to have a relationship with these water bodies, relationship with the forest, relationship with man, animal, trees, mountain, river, everything, everything around them. And that was a very beautiful, holistic relationship that it was not anthropocentric. The forest and the environment was in the center, and human beings were part of that entire ecosystem. Now, the kind of development that we are seeing is pushing that narrative out and bringing the ethnocentric approach. And because of that, now we are chopping off forests to set up agricultural land, to set up cities and urban areas. And that has seen a devastating impact in the Northeast.
No, and in hearing you speak about this, it reminds me of when we were outside of Shillong visiting communities which have been supported by NESFAS. And I think the village we went to also had 31 different species of rice, one village. And so if you can talk a little bit more about the relationship again with community and land and how the indigenous communities of the world protect some 80 to 90% of our biodiversity. That would be fantastic.
The amount of biodiversity that we have in the region is mind blowing. You know, even farm to food, what we have been doing is trying to revive some of these indigenous varieties of food, the forest food mainly. So, one interesting aspect of our Bihu now, this still we have the one of the most colorful and joyful and feasting Bihu, and lots of Bihu dance also happens during this period. There is this tradition of serving 101 varieties of vegetables and herbs to the guests. And the constituent of these 101 varieties of vegetables and herbs keeps changing, after every few miles. So you can imagine the amount of diversity required for such changes to happen. But over the year, we have forgotten how to identify these vegetables and herbs. We have forgotten how to engage with the forest. We are becoming slowly and slowly more dependent on the market. And therefore, we are losing touch with, what's around us. We are losing touch with our traditional varieties of resources that we have around that. And therefore, organizations like NESFAS, organizations like Farm2Food, even a friend of mine, Samir Bodola, he is also working on forest food. So there are many organizations doing some wonderful work around bringing back those traditional food systems, and also not just bringing it back onto the table, but also building a relationship, reviving those relationships with the local food, and making people proud of their own heritage and traditional system. But along with that, there is also this effort to ensure that whatever conversations that we are having about the food system, there is a certain scientific basis also. So when I'm saying that these are some of the 25 or 30 varieties of local herbs and vegetables that needs to be consumed that needs to be served at the midday meals in school, that needs to be served at home. There are also scientific nutritional mapping that has been done by Assam Agriculture University's Food Science Department, who have come up with a beautiful booklet. Even NESFAS has come up with an amazing booklet on the nutritional value of each of these traditional foods. In fact, I remember there was this person who had put up a picture of local variety of herb, probably on one of the social media page. And suddenly he gets a call all the way from USA saying that we have seen this picture. Can we request you to supply us these herbs? Because we found out that it has got one of the highest nutrition value, and we want to do a commercial marketing of this product. And we were very surprised to see that it is quite high in demand. But at the same time, we are also cognizant of the fact that the products that we have in the forest, the product that we have around us, the local resources, may not be enough to do a commercial engagement. We do not produce huge amount of any product to be a commercially successful. We grow enough to sustain us and happily sustain us rather than, become commercially rich.
Yet what was clear to me in visiting the Northeast was each community is so spread apart, and transportation going from one place to the next. And so these large models of community kitchens in a manner that has 10, 15, 20 million people in a city make a lot of sense, but they don't make sense when you're in more rural settings with lesser populations. And so if you can speak a little bit about your own organization, Farm2Food, how did it start? How are you bringing some of these principles of indigenous foods to the table and engaging children and youth at an early stage, while, of course, providing them nutrition? That would be very helpful.
Our ancestor had believed that too much of everything is bad. So you would see that a region also has been practicing Zoom cultivation. And Zoom cultivation is not just about slashing, chopping down the forest, burning it, and then doing the farming there. It is about mindfully clearing a small space, small patch of forest land to do farming, to do mindful farming, and then after some point of time, moving out of that place so that the land has enough time to regenerate itself, you know. And that was the mindful engagement our ancestor had built up. Do not, we were told not to focus on increasing the number, but focus on increasing the diversity, even in our agriculture pattern, even in our cropping. So when in the paddy field, you will see that there is rice growing, but there are also lots of amazing nutrition filled herbs, as well as there are fish in the paddy field. So it is providing you a holistic nutrition supply. So before we started Farm to Food, we were figuring out what are some of the big challenges the region is going through, and what could be the possible solutions of it. We figured out that, like I said, Northeast is blessed with one of the most fertile land, but at the same time, the affinity toward agriculture among young people are slowly disappearing. Even with not just with young people, but even parents, even the farmers who are doing probably earning lots of money through agriculture would be happy to send their children away from agriculture, would be happy to see that their children are working in some other MNCs or government jobs. I mean, there's nothing wrong in those aspirations, but but we also need food. Somebody need to grow those food. Somebody need to grow food in a very mindful approach, and that's where we thought, why not create an enabling environment to inspire young people toward a career of agri entrepreneurship. And when we talk about agri entrepreneurship, it is not just about providing the skills of agriculture and entrepreneurship, it is also a lot to do with the mindset. And mindset formation happens at a very early age in school space. In the school space, young people are exposed to education, exposed to the world outside. They may not be physically exposed, but yeah, they are exposed through books and stories and the teaching system that they undergo in the school and colleges. They are exposed to the world outside. And that's where in schools and college, career aspirations also begins to develop. And therefore, we thought, why not introduce agri entrepreneurship in the school itself? At the same time, we were also cognizant of the fact that there are certain needs in schools and colleges. One of the first needs is the health. They will be still have one of the highest number of young people who are suffering from anemia. Maternal mortality rate is one of the highest in Assam. Clearly, many of these things are also linked with the nutrition deficiency in our diet. And unfortunately, we have not realized that most of the answers are lying within our reach. We may not have enough money to go to the market to buy some nutrition related products from the market, but we do have the forest and the local paddy field around where we can get some of the most nutritious herbs and vegetables from. So therefore, what we did was help school children set up school nutrition garden. This is way back in 2011. Help them set up nutrition garden. And this nutrition garden, we were cognizant of the fact that we want them to look at an entrepreneurship model. We want them to use local resources. So instead of giving money to these young people to employ somebody to help them in the garden, instead of buying seeds for them, we said, why don't you resource your products and all the help that you need from the local community? So these school children go to the local community, do a Bijdan Yatra, collect local seeds and saplings, bring it back, and then grow it in their own school nutrition garden. So they are, of course, using the local product and encouraging the local crops, local varieties of herbs and vegetables to grow in their garden. But at the same time, there's this beautiful incident that I have been sharing with many people, but still inspires me is that we were attending one of the parents' orientation, and one of the mother came up to us and said, "Thank you, sir, for doing such an amazing program with our children. My daughter is now consuming bitter gourd, Karela in her food." And we were taken aback, like, I'm a father, I'm a parent, I know the children and vegetables are usually North Pole and South Pole. They do not come together. And bitter gourd do not exist in their universe. I mean, not even in their multiverse. Yeah, not just one universe. So here, this 11-year-old child was happily eating Karela in her lunch. So we went up to that girl and asked her, "We heard that you're eating bitter gourd. That's fantastic. How did this happen?" And the girl very easily said, "No, this is the vegetable that I have grown." So you see, no amount of lectures on nutrition behavior will induce such change. This is coming out from their own experience of growing something, and that's how the ownerships around food and vegetables are built. So nutrition is one major factor for us in the school nutrition garden. The second part, we are also cognizant of the fact that with good health, you also need good education in the school. And therefore, we have positioned the school nutrition garden as an open science and mathematics laboratory for children to learn science, math, of course, language also, from each and every activity that they do, right from picking up tools, gardening tools, talking about physics within that, why some equipments have tools have long handle, why some tools have shorter handle. There's beautiful, amazing physics chapter in that. Of course, picking the land for your farm is also very, very important. There are important science chapter involved in that. And they will, you and I don't know how many times we have memorized the formula for perimeter, but we have never maybe used it, right? But here, children are not memorizing the formula for perimeter. They are using it because they need these formulas for fencing their school nutrition garden. Yeah, setting up their raised bed for nutrition garden. So, learning science and maths. So, that's one big agenda for our school nutrition garden. Third aspect is that this is a first and exposure for these young people to earn some money from agri enterprise. which is their school nutrition garden. They prepare vermicompost. So these vermicomposts are bought by their parents, bought by the community members, and also bought by the teachers themselves. Many of these vegetables are bought by the teachers, the community members. Of course, it is supplied to the midday meal scheme that they eat in their school. So, nutrition, education, and entrepreneurship. These three combined gives them a starting point for thinking about agri entrepreneurship. But also at the same time, we are cognizant of the fact that we need to create an enabling environment around these young people also. So therefore, engaging with their mothers, engaging with their parents, engaging with the community on agri-entrepreneurship spaces and opportunities. So we have cadres of Pasu Sakhi by those, we have cadres of Solar by those, of Solar Sakhis, we have cadres of Krishi Sakhis. These mothers and parents have been encouraging community members to adopt not just diversified income opportunities through livestock management, through crops management, also through using renewable energy solutions, but also creating a sustainable and ecologically sensitive livelihood options around the community. So the community itself then becomes a model for young people to look up to. That yes, I can see my parents doing some wonderful work. I can see my uncle doing some wonderful work, picking up agri entrepreneurship. So I will also take this a notch higher up. So that's how you build an aspiration, career aspiration. Young people need to get exposed to such amazing work being done. And and having said that, they will the beautiful thing is we didn't have to start from the scratch. We just have to build linkages. The agriculture practices that we are promoting in schools have been practiced for centuries by our community. It's just that bring that back inside the school. There are wonderful organizations, even government agencies doing amazing work around livelihood. So bringing that together, weave it in such a beautiful way that everything makes sense, presenting a very big, beautiful, coherent picture, enabling environment for youngsters to see and aspire for a agri entrepreneurship career. And I think that's probably the answer to the climate change that we are seeing. That's probably the answer toward the migration pattern that we see. Migration, not just the climate refugees, but also migrating because of economic reasons. There are more reasons now to stay back and grow, not just economically, but also as a society we are growing and being proud of our heritage and traditional resources that we have and work on that. And when more and more young people join in, I think more innovations happen. More and more young people joins in into a process. I think more democratized the process becomes, and many more leaders you will start seeing. There will be many more Deep Jyotis, there will be many more Nespas, many more Farm to Food, many more thousands of organizations because these young people are excited. I think that's what Farm to Food has been trying to do.
No, no, thank you, Deep. And like you were saying, while the name is Farm to Food, you've clearly touched upon youth mobilization, nutrition, STEM, entrepreneurship, engaging the community, climate change, diversity, where what one school does is actually quite different than what happens in another school. And so, if you can just give us a sense of how many schools you're in, what are sort of your aspirations, that would be great.
Like you said, one school would be very different from the other school because one school is located in a particular community. The school nutrition garden will be shaped and colored by the local community's knowledge and practices. So we started off with about 15 schools way back in 2011. And slowly, we directly expanded to almost about 200, 300 schools where we were directly going and working. And then we realized that that's very antithesis to our philosophy of diversification, anti to our philosophy of integrating the local culture and local practices into the farming. And therefore, what we have started doing is then inspire organizations, agencies to look at the model, adopt it in their local and localize into their local customs, local practices, agriculture, agroecology practices, and then run it. So far, we have been running this school nutrition garden program, or what we call farmpreneur program, are being run in almost 6 states across the country, apart from the Northeast region. And all of them are working in school, and all of them are working in government schools. All of them are working in partnership with the local community, where the local community and student and the school have come together to run the school nutrition garden. We were very fortunate that the Assam government adopted the school nutrition garden program way back in 2016. And in 2019, we were invited for a Chintan Baithak, Chintan Sabha at MHRD. It was Ministry of Human Resource Development at that point of time. We presented our Farmpreneur or School Nutrition Garden program. And then in 2020, just before the lockdown happened, Government of India adopted this policy of school nutrition garden, and they have notified all the school that serves midday meal to ensure that they have the school nutrition garden in the school also. So these practices going across the country right now. So 1.2 million schools are running this school nutrition garden program across the country. It's beautiful. Each school has their own beautiful ways of engaging. It has its own beautiful color and composition.
It's amazing, given that you're working again across the country, and most of our country is still very agriculture focused, and farming is a livelihood. I think there are many other components to this. But when scale happens to that level, and you were even speaking about your own experiences of sort of going into 200 to 300 schools, how do you ensure sort of the soul remains in your program and in the programs that are sort of occurring across, a million plus schools?
I think that's a very, very pertinent question that you have put up. And when you scale, which very scary term, because while scaling, it's very difficult to maintain the original soul of the program. What we have been doing is that we have developed a basic, very, very simple framework. And whoever picks up the framework, we ask them to use the framework, but use the local contextual knowledge. The moment there is partnership with local farmers, there is partnership with local community, it automatically develops its own soul. So the soul may not be a Northeast soul. The soul will be Maharashtrian soul. The soul will be Uttarakhand soul, a Punjab soul, a Karnataka-based program or nutrition garden will have the soul and the culture and the ethos of local practice and traditional know-how of what is grown, the agroecology practices of Karnataka. I think there are amazing organizations across the country and agencies across the country who are doing some wonderful work. What needs to be done is to link up with them. Encourage organizations working on livelihood and agriculture in and around your school to come and facilitate the setting up of school nutrition garden. Rather than farm to food staff going and doing the training, let the local people do the training. Let the local agencies do the training. And that will help build the soul of the program, instead of copy pasting everything.
I think that kind of brings us to then the Rebuild India Fund, which is, I think, the same sort of principles of the realization. We have phenomenal, small, localized organizations that exist across the country, and certain solutions cannot be cookie cutter approach, especially in even a region which I believe is about 5 crores, which is again the 7 or 8 states of the Northeast. And if we're talking about a population of 5 crores, when we're looking at over 200 tribes and languages and whatnot spoken, it is very, very different. And then when we think about the 1.4 billion people we have across the country and the beautiful sort of pluralistic society that we currently live in, the premise of Rebuild, I would love for you to actually share with the listeners and what excited you about it. Why are you on the investment committee? And what are things that are being done differently, I guess, that you haven't seen in your sort of 20 plus years of being in the NGO sector?
Why I was excited about Rebuild India was that it talked about bringing back the people into the center, bringing back the community into the center, bringing back those leaders who are located deep inside Imphal, bordering Myanmar. Bring out those leaders from Karnataka who are working with Devdasi, who herself has been through that Devdasi tradition and has come out. Inspire them, celebrate these leaders who have gone through certain experiences, leaders who are close to the issues that they have been working with, and also working with communities that are very, very distant, very remote, and also in a very, very vulnerable space. And also giving the choice to the leader that, hey, I know that you're working in a difficult circumstances, you're working with a very vulnerable group of people. So what kind of support you need? What kind of help you would need? What kind of program you like to run? Giving that choice is the differentiating factor, Deval, at Rebuild India. The other factor is that it is not just these local leaders who are deciding what they will do with the fund, but it's also some of these local leaders who have gone through certain experiences, who are working with marginalized communities. So these local civil society leaders are the one who are making the decisions of whom this fund should go. Right, rather than somebody from the donor agency sitting and deciding, oh, this fund should go to ABC organization, not to XYZ organization has better infrastructure or better social media presence, or the leader can speak in English, more communicative, more articulate. But it's the leader in from the grassroots who knows that there are some amazing work going on at the grassroots level, but they may not be the most articulate one. So I think that democratization, the selection process, democratization of how to use the fund, all this will, what I believe is, will lead into rebuilding a new narrative of how we want to grow, how we want to develop our community, our society, and our country. That's why, when I was presented with the idea of being part of Rebuild India, I said, yes, this is an opportunity to create a new narrative, right, and rebuild our country in a more democratic, pluralistic, and diversified approach.
It would also be interesting just for the group to understand how are funding decisions made within Rebuild? Who's on the investment committee? How do you all interact? What are some of the areas you think have gone well?
How we operate is there are organizations who have been working with, let's say, hundred of organizations, smaller grassroots organizations. So these nodal organizations then refer some of the amazing work that is going on, and these organizations are then picked up by the Rebuild India team. And again, at Rebuild India team, the focus is not on on the proposal itself. The focus is on the LCV, the leader. Who's the leader of this organization? Which kind of community is it working? And the vulnerability index of the community and the issue that the organization is working on. So based on that, the decisions are made, not based on how well you have written the proposal, not based on how well your metrics are, how good your numbers look like. You were there in Imphal meeting when people were asking, do you have a format for proposals? And when you said no, they were like perplexed and then looking at me. In fact, some of them came to me during the tea break and lunch break do we actually not need to submit any proposal? They were like, can you share some structure format for proposal? I said, no proposal, Baba. You're doing amazing work. That itself is a proposal. The amazing work is that we want to work with you. That's our proposal, rather than you giving us the proposal. So we are proposing to you. Can we work with you? That's how Rebuild India operates. Once a data of list of these organizations, and of course there are certain process check happen, and once these data and these information comes to us, so we at the investment committee, we are five of us from different organizations working with diverse experiences. So we have a friend, Deepa Pawar. She runs this amazing organization called Anubhuti Trust. This She is from NTD community. Then we have Nandita from Martha Perel Foundation. She has amazing experience of working with women and women rights, and of course also organizational development. We have Anita from Goons. Goons has been working for, I think, several decades on relief and rehabilitation. And for them, in fact, Goons is pioneer organization in ensuring that when relief approach is not a dehumanizing experience, relief becomes a humanizing experiences for people who are receiving as well as people who are giving it. So Anita from Goons is there. Ramesh, who's working with amazing lot of organizations through Catalyst 2030 and has excellent and very inspiring experiences of engaging with grassroots level organizations. So all these people, we come together. We come together not to say no to any organization, but we come together to say how well can we engage with these organizations, because we have certain experiences, we know what are the challenges these organizations may be facing. So how well probably they can use this opportunity, and how well can Rebuild India engage with these organizations.
Thank you, Deep. And I think, as we think about, again, these organizations, and as you mentioned, the lived experiences that these NGO leaders have had, and how we feel that is the strongest sense of an individual's character, the integrity of the organization, and of course, going to other organizations who have worked with these entities, it's far better than a proposal. And I guess with that, what were your lived experiences? How did you get into the NGO sector? You grew up in the Northeast, you traveled quite a bit because your father worked with government. If you can shed some light onto that, that would be fantastic.
So Deval, my father was one of the first person to come out from his community and go for higher education. My grandfather was very unhappy because my grandfather wanted my father to stay back in the village and take care of the agriculture. I think I was fortunate that my father was a doctor and he was working with central government, so I got exposure to certain privileges in the region. I was born in Arunachal in this beautiful place called Bombdila, which is near Tawang. And I studied in Arunachal for some time and also studied in Assam for some time, later on Bengal and Delhi and Mumbai later on. But during our growing up period in 80s and 90s, the region was going through a difficult phase. It was a tough time for any young person to be young. There were ethnic clashes happening. There were separatist movement going on. And because of which our education got hampered, and many of us were probably not looking beyond probably 5 6 years, or most probably a couple of years ahead. We were not looking at what will be our career aspirations. We were probably not looking at to become a doctor or engineer or such fancy jobs. We were looking at what is the need of the hour of our community and of our society. And I had an opportunity to experience people's movement down there in Madhya Pradesh, the Narmada Bachao Andolan, and also NT Dam with Sundarlal Bahugunaji and at Narmada Bachao Andolan. I realized that even out there, there was big people's movement going on. There were people who were asking for the change, people who were confronting the system in order to change how it is, similar to what we were doing in Assam or in the northeastern region. But the approach was completely different. They were here. The protest was against the system, not against a human being. And the entire engagement, when you're protesting, you are keeping that the values of peace, the values of humanity in your, approach. So there were always spaces created for dialogues, meaningful engagement. And that's how I realized that it is important to have your goal, which is your identity, your culture, your tradition. To achieve that, what is more important is the path that one takes. I'll use an example. These days, Tirth Yatra are happening quite regularly. You know, Tirth Yatra, a person evolves not because he or she has reached the Tirth. A person evolves because he or she has undertaken that journey, that yatra. That's the yatra where lots of introspection can happen. And once introspection and reflection happen, then the change starts happening. That's how I realized. And also, of course, I had an opportunity to work with fantastic organizations like Kava and Community and Youth Collective, Community and Youth Collective, where I realized that there's the need for engaging with young people. And all these experiences brought me back to Assam, where I said I want to engage with young people, but I want to take the community along. I want to take the young people along. Just like in Rebuild India, the process of choosing should be left to the community, should be left to this young person. This young person will decide how she or he would like to set up her garden based on his or her assessment of the situation. And it is the community that will guide rather than I bring in my agriculture expertise and telling them how to grow and what to grow. It is the community which is guiding and inspiring and mentoring the young person to identify the process of growing and taking care of the entire project. So rather than me, I think the solution lies out there. Solution are with people. And I realized that farm to food, we do not want to reinvent the same wheel by doing livelihood training program. We want to partner with organizations who are doing livelihood. So we have partnership with Goat Trust who are doing Pasu Saki training for us in our community. We have partners like Barefoot College who are helping us develop the Solar Saki program for us here. We have partnership with Community the Youth Collective who is helping us to take young people through a certain journey. So instead of us bringing in everything under the sun, we are bringing this relationship back into this partnership. And that's how community also sees that, one day there is Farm to Food team member, there is a Barefoot College ka team member, there is a Goat Trust ka team member. So many people are coming together to do this work. So similarly, community also then comes together to do. We have the tea garden community, we have the missing community, we have the SMS community, we have the Muslim community, the Bodo community. Everybody is coming together to do work together. And I think somewhere down the line, probably this will bring back the leadership back into the hand of each and everyone around us, each and everyone in the community. I think that's the important thing that we at Farm to Food are trying to do. And that's how our young leaders will start believing in themselves and start to have pride in their own local cultures and traditions and heritage and the practices, agroecological practices that we have been going through.
No, thank you. And I think in hearing you speak about, the partnership approach and trusting the community and realizing there's so many different communities that exist. And I think even the visit that we made, and I'm excited to do many, many more visits to learn more about the region. I'm reminded of a U2 song called Invisible. Towards the end of that song, they have a chorus, which is, there is no them, there is no them, there is only us.
Very true, very true. It's all us. We are all in it together. I might say that, oh, I stay in a concrete building. I don't care about people who are facing the flood water in the villages. But sooner or later that water will come to my place also, and my food system will also get impacted by it. So everything is related to each other.
I learned, at least on my trip, lala, which
Lahe
is
lahe, lahe lahe.
lie, excuse me. Especially the world we live in, slow food, slow fashion, slow development is also required, which doesn't mean lazy or not having a sense of urgency. It means more sustainability.
That's the philosophy of nature. Everything will surely happen, but slowly, slowly. Because when you go slowly, you're also giving space to everything around you to grow. So if you want to grow, you have to grow together, and to grow together, you have to go lahe lahe.
Thank you so much, Deep, for sharing your time with us, with sharing your insights, for caring so much for the communities that you serve. And I think we have a lot to learn and a lot to change after listening to you. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about our work of any of the guests, or the Rebuild India Fund, please go to our website, dasra.org/NCE, where we've got show notes, links, and much, much more. Dasra Philanthropy Week returns February 26th to March 1st. It'll be a mix of amazing speakers across 3 cities, Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore, and of course, streaming online for all our global participants and supporters. For more information, go to dasraphilanthropyweek.org. No Cost Extension is produced by the amazing Vaca Media.